Hello fellow Roots of the Blue, and welcome to my channel and welcome to a video on taking NMM to the next level. You might be asking yourself, what is NMM? Well, it stands for non-metallic metal, and it's the art of painting something that looks metallic without using any metallic paints. I have a full playlist on NMM that you can check, but today we will focus on painting a sword and using advanced techniques to make it extra awesome. Let's get cracking. For our sword, we're going to start with a base coat of pure black. I won't paint the notes in this video, but if you want to see how I will paint them, you can watch my Power Axe video because it's going to be the exact same process. What we have to do first is sketch our highlights. Well, the real first step is to decide where our main highlights are going to be. And what I like to do is place one highlight onto the upper section of the blade, and I want my main highlight to be placed around where the fuller of the blade ends. I'm using a stone vermin fur for this, and I will place a second band of highlight here towards the tip, just like that. And here on this side I'm going to place one more or less in the middle of those two. I'm going to apply a second layer. I will leave just a little bit of this transparent first layer showing in between just to help us with the blending later. Just keep on building these highlights until they are basically pure stone vermin fur in a solid color. With our sketch finished, we can start blending all of this, and I'm going to use escape and blight tinge for that. You can do this in several ways. You can do it glazing, you can do layering, but I'm probably going to do heavy glazes just because I like it. Escape and blight tinge is also a very good color for this because it's quite transparent. Again, glazing this in between the black and the stone vermin fur. Don't worry too much, we will refine all of these glazes later using the appropriate colors, be it stone vermin fur and black. If you do it well, the glazes will dry almost immediately. The key is having very little paint on the brush. This can be a really fast process, especially in such a small area like this, because again, if you do it well, the layer of paint you will put in will be basically dry by the moment you finish with the rest of the blade, and you can just move on rather fast. Remember, very little paint on the brush, moving your brush in the direction you want this color to be deposited. With that step done, I'm going to refine small things to refine the transition between the escape and blight tinge and the black. I'm going to take a little bit of black, again same consistency, very thin, very little paint on the brush, and just refine the transition between the black and the escape and blight tinge. Especially on this side of the blade that I want to be way darker than the other. I'm just using water for my glazes. If you have enough control, you don't need anything else, but feel free to use medium if that is easier for you. No shame in that. And in the same vein, I can take some stone vermin fur, again, same super thin consistency, same very little paint on the brush, and refine some of the transitions. For example, here. Just very simple. There you go. It's now time to move into more highlights because we have to get basically to pure white here, and there is a lot of work to be done. To highlight my blade, I'm going to mix in Ulthuan Grey with a stone vermin fur, starting with a 1:1 mix. Again, very thin paint, very little paint on the brush, same process. In this case, I want to concentrate the highlights towards the highlight points. You can use the same sketch method if you want, or you can add some texture, which I'm going to show you in a minute. This will be harder to do because this color is way more opaque because it has a lot of white, so it will be harder to blend, but we're going to manage. You can do some lines, very thin lines like that, to add some texture but also to blend the two colors together, because this is very thin, and doing those lines is basically the same principle as doing stippling, but with lines. I'm going to keep on doing these lines till I get to the desired opacity. This is not super fast process, but it's not as slow as you may think. Once you get into the rhythm of it, you will be able to do this pretty fast. Don't be afraid to overlap this to some of these shadow areas. It's only going to help us. We can blend them back if we feel like it's too much later on. I really like this combination of a colder highlight with a warm midtones for the steel. I think it looks pretty cool. On top of all of this, I'm also going to edge highlight my blade, and immediately that edge highlight starts conveying that metallic look. It's super cool. It's always a super cool moment when you add that edge highlight and suddenly something that wasn't looking metallic starts to look metallic. As I was talking about, I went a little bit overboard with my line blending here, so I'm going to integrate it more with the blade using a glaze of stone vermin fur. Just going over some of the edges of the lines to make them, well, more integrated. Very thin paint, very little paint on the brush. We've gone over this already. And now for the next highlight, I'm going to use Ulthuan Grey. I'm going to start with the edge highlighting, making it more focused towards the areas of highlight of the blade. And of course we're going to keep on with our line blend. You can use glazes if you feel comfortable with them, no issues with that, but I just like this really cool effect. Be careful with the Ulthuan Grey, you want it to be really thin. This is very opaque color, there's a ton of white into it. And as before, we're just going to keep on building this until we reach the full opacity of Ulthuan Grey. The more layers of this you do, the better the effect will be and the smoother the transition. With the blade blending now finished, and I'm quite happy with it, we're going to move on, and the first step will be to add a glint of light here, our maximum highlight point. It's just a rounded highlight on the darker side of the blade with an yellowy hue to simulate the sunlight. And I'm going to use Averland Sunset for that. I'm going to thin my Averland Sunset again very thinly, and I'm going to glaze it towards the point that I want that to be, just at that corner. When you're doing glazes, be very careful on applying a second layer to make sure that the first one is fully dry. I build up this until we go to pure Averland Sunset, and now I'm just going to do the same using Ulthuan Grey, just in the very middle of this glint of light. You can just do an intermediate mix if you want, I'm not going to bother, it's a very small detail and I can get it, but if you're having trouble blending this, don't feel bad if you have to add a little bit of an intermediate mix in this process. Now I want to add even more depth and more subtle touches to this very cool NMM, and I'm going to do that by glazing in some hues here. In my case, I'm going to use Caliban Green and Thousand Suns Blue, one to simulate like a forest or a green terrain, and the other to simulate the sky. I'm going to start with the sky one. For this, I'm just going to thin down Thousand Suns Blue, which is a perfect color for this because it's super transparent naturally. And I'm going to glaze this toward the upper areas of the blade. If you have a curved blade, make sure to glaze this in the sections of the curve that will be facing upwards. In our case, it's a little bit more difficult because we don't have that. I'm just going to subtly glaze it in some of these areas. Like that. You don't want to overdo this, just a touch of blue. And now for the final hue, I'm going to take Caliban Green and do the exact same, thin it down very thinly. You can see it here, almost invisible. And we're going to again build this in layers. In this case, I'm going to apply it in the areas that are facing downwards. And for the very last step of the blade, I'm going to take white and do the final highlights. First of all will be the final edge highlights and a dot there where the sun is glinting. You can always refine the blends more if this is for a competition or something like that, but for a normal display model, this is more than enough. and I think it looks really good. Here on this bright side of the blade, we can do the same as we did with Thuan, just for the final highlight. If you're going to glaze this, I recommend you use white ink instead of white acrylic paint. It's going to be easier for you, but for this purpose I'm just using normal white. Thank you for watching this video, and don't forget that if you like my videos and want to help me make them, you can follow me on social media. You have the links to all my social media in the description below and in the pinned comment of this video. Share and like this video, but most importantly, there is Patreon and channel members. Patrons and members allow me to do all the cool videos that I want to make, and most importantly, they allow me to release them all for free here on YouTube. Perks include access to an amazing Discord community full of lovely people, early access to some of the videos, and now also private one-on-one tutorings. You have two tier options for those, 45 minutes and 3 hours a month. They are filling fast, so if you want to have a private tutoring with me, don't hesitate and join now. Help me and my family enjoy the list of the coolest persons in the planet, including Keroscuris, Flo, Janet, Mark Bellencoop, Will Ewick, Derek Denham, Robert Smith, The Rhinosaur, Heather Amster, Paul Goodwick, Casey Davidson, Thomas, Stefan Franiati, Howard Holdville, Thomas Ustergand, Painting Peter, Javi Mota, Christoph Moret, Bartholomew Cahuza, Victor Domen, Nicolas Furnell, Nich Gallagher, Felix Franke, Brendan Smith, Alfredo Phillips, Tim Uchida, Stephanie Old, Nick DeMao, David Sutherland, Real Nilsson, Oscar and Jonathan Thomberg, Dan Mako, Chris Talios, Jamie Milligan, Kevin Mian, Darcy Farrar, Chris Fivey, Samuel, Natius Maximus, Arundel, Gareth Smith, Mark Jarvis, Joe Simpson, Charles Armitage, G-Force, Dr. V, Leonard Dinneman, Kieran Murthail, and Kevin Sulers. And as for me, I will catch you in the next one. Bye.